What's one word you would use to describe your life?
Probably a roller coaster.
I'd love for you to share with the audience more about your childhood.
Childhood, not a lot I remember about my childhood, but the things I do remember are pretty dark. My father left when I was 2. The stepfather that I was with at the time growing up was just very abusive, very dark times about just getting beat and watching my mother get beat as well. I'm living couch to couch. My uncle gave me a text and he says, "Hey, I'd love to take you out to dinner." I'm like, "Sweet, let's do it." After dinner, we have our good meal, and afterwards I can just tell they're like, so my uncle says, "Hey, we need to tell you something." And he says, "Your mom was diagnosed with colon cancer and she has 6 months to live."
Your next oldest brother sent us a text. "Hey, I'm done."
And we go in there in the backyard and he's got a handgun to his head saying, "Hey, I can't do this anymore. If mom goes, then I go." I remember me and Mama Jill, we go visit my mom Terry, and just to see how she's doing. And I walk inside her room like I usually do, just to see how she's doing. She kind of looks at me and just kind of looks me straight in the eye and kind of touches my face and just says, "You look exactly like my son, Willie. I love him so much." That was probably one of the hardest moments of my life, because I knew then that this was her last night. I didn't say anything to her. I just walked out. I knew it was over, and it was really rough for me to watch her not remember who I was. But the next day, we were in school, and we were actually in separate classes. When I got called down to the office, all I was thinking was, I wasn't even thinking about my mom. I was thinking about, oh, am I in trouble? Like, what did I do this time? So I'm walking down the hallway, and I see you walk up the stairs from the PE room. And I look at you, I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, got called down to the office." And I'm like, "Oh, me too." And as soon as we went to the principal's office, opened the door, and Mama Jill was there. Same feeling I had when Uncle Lynn told me that my mom had 6 months. When the principal said, "Hey, mom passed away this morning." I couldn't hear anything else. I don't remember anything I said. All I was thinking about was, I didn't even get to say goodbye. I didn't even get to tell her how I felt. If I could have just had one more day just to tell her, I'm sorry for not being there more, and that I love you.
All right. We're here. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Thanks for having me, bro.
A lot of people won't realize this because you're brown and I'm not. But this is my
we
brother.
look alike.
This is my brother, Willie. Not by blood, but by spiritual, deep connection. He really is my brother. A lot of people are like, "No, I don't believe it." He really is my brother. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Will, I want to start out asking you, what's one word you would use to describe your life?
Funny enough, probably a roller coaster, honestly.
I didn't tell him to say that, by the way. Yeah, it's actually the word that came to my mind as well. I think the audience is going to get to hear a story today that is, I think, very personal and very dear to both of us. And it's the origin and the story about how we became brothers. And I'm really excited to share it. And I hope people will listen to this podcast, because I think it has the opportunity to change a lot of people's lives.
100%.
We don't usually do this in chronological order, but I think to set up how you and I met, I'd love for you to share with the audience more about your childhood.
Childhood, not a lot I remember about my childhood, but the things I do remember are pretty dark. Just in the Polynesian culture, the way they discipline is very much physical. So anytime I got in trouble, and if you're the oldest boy in the house, it's he's the one that gets, whether it's my fault or not.
You're
right?
the example.
I'm the example, right? Yeah. So a lot of pretty serious beatings on my side, like man, stuff I haven't shared. There's a lot of people that I've held in, just like if little brothers wanted something, or if they're screaming or fighting, then I'm the one who kind of gets the example, right? Gets beat by my stepfather. Actually, is who I grew up with most, because my father wasn't there. But just my father left when I was 2, so I didn't know him very well, my biological father. Then my mother got remarried 3 different times, or 5 different times, but 3 different times since I was in the house. So the stepfather that I was with at the time growing up was just very abusive in a gang in Utah, in a Tongan gang. And for me, like grew up very much respecting women, respecting my mother. So anytime I saw her get hurt or beat, then I would kind of step in as the older brother, and which was probably not the best idea, but it's
what you knew to do.
It's what I knew to do. So yeah, I got beat a lot, and just like, not just a hanger, there's a lot of fists and different. I mean, yeah, there's different objects I get hit with, but a lot of hand, fists, beatings where I would just have to take it. That's kind of my childhood. That's what I remember about my childhood the most, is just very dark times about just getting beat and watching my mother get beat as well. So
what was one example of a time where your stepfather felt justified in beating you?
Specific, I guess what comes to mind first is I was in middle school, Payson Middle School in southern Utah, but I remember I was kicked out of school because I got in a fight, and I got in a fight because the only way I could cope with like the beatings at home and the anger that I had is I would take it out on kids at school, which was unfortunate. And got in a fight, got kicked out, and when I came home, I knew I was so scared to tell my dad or my stepdad, because he told me beforehand, he's like, if you get in a fight, then you better win, because the beating you'll get from me will be worse than the beating you get from the guy you fight. So I ended up fighting this kid in school. Long story short, got expelled from school, and then came home, and I let him know, like, hey, I got in a fight and I won. And I could just see in his face how upset he was. And so he threw this this plastic apple at me and hit me in the face. And I took off and ran into a field, and he chased me down with his truck, got out of the truck, and just started beating me. Just started beating me in the field and saying, this is what you get for getting expelled at school and fighting at school. And I was just like, what? Like, I won the fight. Like, why are you beating me? So took me back to the house and beat me a little bit more before my mom came home, because he knew that I'd probably tell my mom, and he said, don't you dare tell your mom. So I was like, all right, like, I won't say anything. So that's probably one that I just remember the most.
So I met your biological father, I met your stepfather that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Describe what he looks like physically.
What he looks like to me, what I remember him looking like, 'cause I haven't seen him for like a lot of years, is just a big, probably 6'4", 6'5" Polynesian guy, tatted up, beard, just pretty scary looking guy. Like, he could be nice sometimes, but he's a pretty rough going guy. So
maybe I didn't meet him, but I've seen pictures of him.
Yeah,
he had longer hair for some of his life.
Yeah,
we're not talking about a small fellow, right? We're talking about a giant among men, Polynesian,
yes,
gang member. I mean, so the kind of beatings you took were probably different than what many who were beat as children took.
Very different than a spanking, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. What were the light moments, if any, that you remember as a child?
A lot of light moments were just me playing sports, or me playing with a football on the field with my siblings, or hanging out with a lot of friends. Like I was always like away from the house, hanging out with friends. I would get in trouble for doing it, but it was my way of getting away from the house and not having to deal with like what was going on at home, right? So the light moments was just like, I had a lot of fun times with friends, and I had a lot of fun times in sports. So I kind of distracted myself by, I'm just going to play sports. And that'll help me get my anger out too, but it's also super fun for me. So
eventually this stepfather leaves your mom. What was that experience like? What transpired?
Yeah. So, I guess first stepfather, he got deported. And so he leaves, gets deported, mother gets remarried. Eventually they break up and he leaves. And, for me, it was actually super, super exciting for me. Like, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I can just be with my family, my mom. Don't have to be with these scary looking dudes, and I can come home. You know what I mean? So,
did you ever feel fear for your life or your mom's life with some of those relationships you had?
I wouldn't say mine. I would say my mom's. I think I was not like. I guess I wasn't really thinking about my life. I was really thinking about my mom's, because anytime she would get beat, I was more scared of her, for her than I was for me. Yeah. So that's why I would step in.
Yeah. So eventually you start playing football. This is your outlet.
Mm-hmm.
You start getting pretty good, and you're playing football down in Orem, Utah at Orem High, right?
Yeah, Timpview, and then went to Orem.
Yeah, Timpview as a freshman,
Mm-hmm.
moved to Orem as a sophomore, and partway through your sophomore year, you end up getting some news about your mom that was probably pretty difficult to handle.
Yeah. Actually, moved to Orem and started going to Orem High, tore my ACL in the football game, and that season was over. Specifically remembering my uncle gave me a text. I'm hanging out with friends. I'm living couch to couch. My family lives, I didn't know where they were living at the time. No contact with my mom or siblings. I ran away. So I was living like friends to friends to house to house. So shout out to my friends and their families for keeping me alive and letting me sleep on their couch. But I get a text from my Uncle Lynn, and great man, someone I've always looked up to. So when I saw his text, I was like super excited and happy to hear from him. And he says, hey, let's go to lunch or dinner, and I'd love to take you out to dinner. I'm like, sweet, let's do it. Have a girlfriend at this time. Super obsessed with her at the time. Young 14, 15-year-old kid at the time. I was obsessed with this girl. Go to dinner with my uncle out in Maggleby's Fresh, I remember, in the River Woods, and having a good time. My sister's there, and I haven't seen her for a good year or two. And I'm like, oh, like, good to see you. And after dinner, we have our good meal, and afterwards, I can just tell they're like, they want to talk to me about something. And I'm like, if they tell me that I have to move back, it's a no. And I was so selfish at the time, right? So I just wanted to be with my friends. So my uncle said, hey, we need to tell you something. It's going to be pretty rough for you to hear. And he says, your mom was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she has 6 months to live. And the way I can explain it is, like, if you ever see a movie and people space out and it's kind of tunnel vision, and that's all. I couldn't hear anything else. But that's all I heard was, your mom has 6 months to live. And really, really rough for me to hear. You know, really rough for me to hear, because although I didn't live with her, I still loved her, and I was super close with her. And the way I responded was not the way I felt, and the way I was feeling was I was scared, I was nervous, and all I wanted to do was see my mom. But the way I responded, which is super selfish of me, is I said, "Do I have to move?" And because I don't want to move, I don't want to leave my girlfriend, I don't want to leave my friends. It was my way of coping with stress and anxiety, and my way of, when I was scared of something, I would run away. So, so yeah, when I heard that news, it shook me. It shook me for sure.
So ultimately, they say, no, you're going to move, right?
Yeah.
And I know that's the way the story goes, because within not a lot of time, all of a sudden you show up 3 or 4 houses down from me in Bountiful, which was your Uncle Lynn who took you out to dinner.
Yeah.
So you show up in Bountiful, you're pretty angry, you're sad, you're feeling all kinds of probably different emotions. When you first got to Bountiful, what's going through your mind?
How can I get back to Orem? How can I leave?
Yeah.
How can I get away from this situation? Living in the basement of my uncle's house. Really good to see my mom and my family, but just an angry, angry child at the time. Very angry, very mad, very sad at everything. Very mad at that I had to leave friends, that I had to leave what I was doing at the time, my girlfriend, sports, school, but also sad that, like, man, my mom has 6 months to live. And like, how can I just get away from all this? So that's how I was feeling at the time.
And at some point we meet, you and I.
Yeah.
What's your version of not the whole story, but just meeting me for the first time?
No thanks.
I don't need more friends.
Yeah, just I think for me, I was so done with everything that when you and Dad Wayne came to the door and introducing yourself, I was just like, cool, nice to meet you. And my mom, after you guys left, said, you need to make friends with him. I was like, no, I'm good. I have friends.
Yeah. Yeah. My version was very similar. I didn't particularly like your attitude. I thought that and obviously being 15 or whatever we were at that time, I think it was 15, like, you're not a rational thinker at 15. So I'm not thinking that you're suffering at all. I'm just thinking, yeah, this guy's kind of like a dick,
Yeah.
you know? And I had heard so many things about you being a star football running back, and I was the star quarterback guy, you know, like at my school, that I certainly had like this, you know, ego, like, nah, I'm not going to let this guy come in and take over my spotlight as like the athlete at my school, right? And so I think I felt the same way initially. And we definitely didn't connect. It wasn't like a love at first sight thing. We didn't connect. I didn't reach out. You didn't reach out. What do you remember next in you and I's relationship developing?
I just remember, from what I remember, after, I don't even know, because I guess I was hanging out with a different crowd, but started hanging out at playing some Madden, if you remember, playing some video games. And I guess long story short, I just kept going over to your house and eventually just started never leaving. So my version would be, I started going to school, met some different people. You also invited me one more time and went over to your house. And after that, it was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to hang out with this guy all the time.
Yeah. I think you let me into your circle of friends in Orem as well,
Yeah.
which which I know meant a lot to you. It meant a lot to me too. That now I had this new group that was amazing in Orem that you had developed. Amazing group of people. Um, and I think once you realized that I was willing to like take you down there because you didn't have a car,
No.
and I'm like, hey, I like these guys. Like, I'll take you down there, and we would go down there together. And I was now part of that group. I think that also early on helped solidify our relationship because now we didn't have to be separate. It didn't have to be, I've got my people in Bountiful and I got my people in Orem. It's like we became the same
Yeah.
group, right? What ends up transpiring next from your vantage point?
Yeah, just started getting into football. Getting pretty serious into football. Got rid of the girlfriend in Orem. Started hanging out. Like, this is within from sophomore year to senior year. I started just making my friends out in Bountiful and sticking pretty solid and consistent in Bountiful. Going to school. My mom is still living, right? So 2 years later, she's still living, and yeah, me and you become closer than ever. I end up, I guess it would probably be junior, senior year, I end up moving into your house, and your mom being, Mama Jill being like, hey, yeah, he can live here. And yeah.
That's where my version of the story is a little different than yours, which I think is why this is really fun to unpack.
Yeah.
My version is I started to get closer to your family as well.
Mm-hmm.
You remember late nights, wrestling matches and rugby matches in the basement with Sione and Connor and Setu and all your brothers.
Yeah.
I started to get a lot closer to your mom, to your sister, to your uncle. I felt like in a weird way, I became a part of that family before you became a part of my family.
Yeah.
And I remember at some point, maybe a year after you moved there, your mom's visible digression every like time I saw her was really hard to watch, right? And I remember walking in, at some point you guys move out of Lynn's house when you're a junior.
Yeah.
So about a year later, you move into a new place, not far, a couple miles away. And I remember walking in and, you know, your mom at this point is like pretty immobile. Mm-hmm. She's just laying in a bed. And I remember your, every time I was there, you'd be sitting on the bed with your mom. And that was like pretty much, I think, I also remember you becoming very depressed during this time, like as your mom started to really struggle. And it was much harder for you than it was for me even to watch her die before our eyes. And your depression got really bad. So bad that I remember one night it was 12 o'clock, 12:30. Let's see if we can get through this. And I got a text from you. And the text said something to the effect of, it said something like, "Hey man, I just want you to know." This is before you moved in. You were staying at my house a couple times a week, but not all the time. And you said, "Hey man, I just want you to know like how much I love you." And I I knew you were saying that for a reason that was different than just to tell me that. And I'm like, "Thanks, man. Love you too. Like everything good." And you're like, "Tonight's gonna be my last night." And I remember calling you, and you weren't picking up. And so I just got in the car and I drove to your house, and you weren't there. Um, and I just remember like sitting in your driveway, and you're not there. It's 1 a.m, and I just prayed to God, like, just like, help me find him, because if I can find him, then like I think I could save him. And I start driving, and I'm super nervous. I'm kind of panicking at this point, and I end up, within 5 minutes, I end up finding you, just walking on the street, and I remember rolling down my window and just saying, "Hey man, just get in," and you did. You didn't ask any questions, and you got in the car, and we went back to my house, and I said, "Hey, just sleep here tonight." And I remember we didn't say a lot that night, I don't think. And you slept there, and I think you ended up sleeping. I think it stuck. And I remember I was battling with mom before then to convince her to let you stay with us. And she really wasn't having it initially. She was like, "No, he needs to stay with his family and be with his family and his siblings." And I remember the next morning I woke up, and thank goodness, like, you were still there and okay. And I remember I went up to mom and I said, "Hey," I didn't tell her what happened, but I said, "Hey, from here on, he's staying with us." And she knew that that was the right thing to do. She had some sort of intuition, clearly, that changed her heart. And she said, "Okay, I think that's the right thing." And so we got you your own room set up, and yeah, from there you I don't I don't remember you ever not staying in our house.
Yeah. Man, those I haven't thought about that that situation in a long time. Like you said, I was super depressed, and then in a spot where just even being at my house, it was with my mom where she was living, was super hard to see her digress. And my siblings weren't happy with me because I was never there, and I just was torn of what I should do. And I thought at that time the best thing for me is just go, and just go forever. And thank goodness, and praise the Lord that you found me. Because, yeah, I was so determined that I just started walking, and it was a really dark time in my life where I didn't know how to handle about to lose someone very important to me, but also having siblings that essentially they hated me. You know, they didn't want me around. And then, yeah, man, it was a super rough time for me.
I remember so many other, obviously, experiences. We could talk about a lot of different things that were really beautiful with our relationship too.
Yeah.
Most of our relationship was really beautiful. There was only a few times that were pretty dark, like that one, obviously. But
Yeah.
You know, I remember your siblings really, really struggling too, and these guys became like brothers to me. And I remember similarly, you and I were hanging out a few months after that happened, and your next oldest brother sent us a text, the one right below you. That was similar, like, "Hey, I'm done." Do you remember how that unraveled?
Yeah. I remember very vividly. We were on a double date, actually, you and I. Just driving by, and I get a text from my brother, and I get a call from my sister first saying, "Hey, you need to come home. We have an issue with Setu," and Setu just let me know that he was done with his life as well. And I remember I didn't want to make a huge scene because we were in the car. So I said, "Hey, can you stop by the house real quick, my house real quick?" And I said, "Tyler, can you please come in with me?" You not knowing exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Telling the girls, just stay here. And as we were walking, I'm letting you know, hey, Seti's about to take his life. And we go in there in the backyard, and he's got a handgun to his head, saying, "Hey, I can't do this anymore. If mom goes, then I go." That's what I remember vividly, is if mom goes, I go.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do in that situation. And we were all kind of shocked. We were staying pretty far away from him. And I just remember we were slowly just moving towards him and talking to him, trying to talk him down, and wondering where he got this gun. Where'd you get this? Where did you get this? And what's going on? Talk to me. And I knew that he was feeling exactly what I was feeling. And just like you were a savior to me, I was like, how can I help my brother? How can I help him? Eventually we were able to talk him down and move closer to him and take the gun away, but pretty scary moment.
Yeah, that was like one of so many things that transpired in that year, really the last year of your mom's life. So now we're seniors in high school. Your mom's getting really bad. And we end up, I don't recall if we're in the same class or how it happened, but you and I get called to the office together.
Yeah.
Do you recall what happened exactly?
Yeah. First off, backtrack a night before. The night before, I remember mom and I actually, you weren't there. I don't remember where you were, but
Mom Jill.
Yeah, Mom Jill.
Our mom.
Yeah. Me and Mama Jill, we go visit my mom Terry, and just to see how she's doing. Kids are in there, they're having fun. And I walk inside her room like I usually do, just to see how she's doing. And usually she's like, "Hey, Willie, good to see you. Love you. How are you?" This time was a little different. I walk in and waiting for the hey and a big, huge hug in the room. And she's laying there and she kind of looks at me with confusion. She's looking at me like she doesn't know who I am. And I'm walking towards her and I can tell she's like a little nervous, and Mama Jill's like behind me, and she kind of looks at me and just kind of looks me straight in the eye and kind of touches my face and just says, "You look exactly like my son, Willie. I love him so much." that was probably one of the hardest moments of my life, because I knew then that this was her last night. And I didn't say anything to her. I just walked out. And this is a hard moment too, because it's something I regret. That I've regretted for a lot of my life is I didn't say anything. I just walked outside to the car and sat by the car and just asked Mama Jill, please unlock the door. I knew it was over, and I just didn't say anything. So it's really rough for me to watch her not remember who I was. But the next day, we were in school, and we were actually in separate classes. I was in chemistry, and you must have been in PE or something, because when I got called down to the office, all I was thinking was, I wasn't even thinking about my mom. I was thinking about, oh, am I in trouble? Like, what did I do this time? Or,
yeah.
So I'm walking down the hallway, and I see you walk up the stairs from the PE room. And I look at you, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I got called down to the office. And I'm like, oh, me too. Still not, like, didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
It was early in the morning too. It was that first period. Walked to the office, and I could see it felt like everyone in that room was just staring at me. All the counselors and office ladies were just like looking at me like, hey, Willie. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And as soon as we went to the principal's office, opened the door, and Mama Jill was there. As soon as I opened the door and I saw her, I knew what was going on. And I walked in, and same feeling I had when Uncle Lynn told me that my mom had 6 months. Had that tunnel vision when the principal said, hey, your mom passed away this morning. I couldn't hear anything else. They were saying stuff to me. Mom was saying stuff to me. You guys were just saying stuff to me. I couldn't hear anything else. I don't remember anything you guys said. All I was thinking about was, I didn't even get to say goodbye. I didn't even get to tell her how I felt. And that I was sorry that I wasn't there more. That's all I was thinking was that. And like, if I could have just had one more day just to tell her, I'm sorry for not being there more, and that I love you. But yeah, I just remember breaking down, and I wanted to break down there. I remember I wanted to cry and break down there because I didn't want to do it in front of anyone else. I knew that my brothers, they're young at the time. My youngest, Sienna, was probably 9, 10. And I knew, like, if they see me break down, then they're going to break down. I need to be strong. So broke down in the office, and when I was ready to go and see my mom, I was ready. As soon as we got there, to see my mom, she's still going in the same room that she has been in, and all my siblings are sitting there. And I see Sienna at her feet, confused, wondering what's going on. Again, he's like 9 or 10 at the time. And I think when I saw her, she had a smile on her face and a tear in her eye. And I knew that she was just free from pain. I knew that she was happy. And that right there made me so happy that she was just free from all the pain. Then I just walked in the hallway and didn't want to cry in front of my siblings. I wanted to be strong for them. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that, if you look at all of your biological siblings now, they were 9, 11, 13 or 14,
Yeah.
17. Like, then your sister she must have been 19.
Yeah.
All of them went through a lot. And I think if you would have pressed pause right there and said, where do you think all of these children end up? It would have been super easy to say, like, not in a good place. We don't know, but it's not going to be good, right? None of them have a father. So I think if, all of your siblings went through a lot during that time, and I think if you would have had a crystal ball and said, like, where do these kids ultimately end up, it wouldn't have been good.
Not a good place.
You would have said dead, jail, uneducated, no job, minimum wage. You would have said all those things.
Yeah.
And miraculously, not without some more trials after your mom passed away, but miraculously all of you have ended up in like a really good spot. Like, what do you think? How do you think that happened?
I just think for me, I just think we really wanted to make our mom proud. And first and foremost, I remember thinking if there's one thing I could do is to set the example for my siblings on how we should live. We're if you were to look at us, like you said, people would probably say you were meant to have a janitorial job. And thank goodness for my mom being our first entrepreneur in our family, just had that drive as well. And I had that drive. My siblings have that drive, and I just told myself I'm going to break a generational curse and cycle, and I'm going to, with a lot of trials, more trials, but I'm going to make something of myself and of this family, and set the example.
Yeah. I mean, you had siblings in and out of psych wards,
Yep.
depression, anxiety, on the streets. I mean, you had all kinds of challenges the next few years. And I think one of the main things that you could also attribute to them ending up where they are is the people that ultimately rallied together.
Oh yeah.
Around you and your siblings, right?
Oh yeah.
I would say in addition to what you said, you setting the example, which I fully agree with, I think the other thing was the people and the families that took you guys in and really rallied around you guys. I think had a lot to do with the fact that all of them have turned out the way that they have.
I think the most, that's probably number one for us is you, and to me, you and the Hall family, to my brothers and the families that they had. Like, we wouldn't be able to be where we are today without you guys, and that's, to me, when I tell the story, when people ask me about the story and how I got through it, I was like, if Tyler didn't come to my door and didn't pursue trying to be friends with me and befriend me, I'd be in a different situation.
Yeah. Yeah, my life would be a lot different too. It shows the power of like human connection.
Yeah.
Like humans, there's all this new technology, there's all this new AI and stuff, like humans being automated out of the equation left and right. But at the end of the day, human connection is ultimately what the difference is in the outcome of somebody's life, right?
Yeah.
And you went through phases of life, and I did too, and I think we all do, where you're connected to the wrong humans, and the outcome can be really bad. And when you get connected to the right humans, the right people, the outcome can be beautiful. And I think you and your family are a testament to that.
Yeah, 100%. I think without, like I said, without you pursuing, and I'm just talking about not just my brother, but I'm talking about my personal situation, is if you weren't to pursue it, if you didn't befriend me, and let me stay in your home and fight for me, I would be in a different place. I'd probably be on the streets. I'd probably be in jail. I'd probably be somewhere else or uneducated. But the lessons I learned in the hall home are lessons and principles and rules I've never had in my life, but that have bettered me for my whole life.
Yeah. What's the last thing you want to leave with the audience? Any parting thoughts?
Just love, relationships. I think, I know the relationships we have in our life, if we don't keep those so dear and close, if we don't just love people around us and are grateful for the people around us, and if we don't let them know that daily, for me, myself, if I didn't have you guys, if you guys didn't love me and let me know that you're here and you're grateful for me, my life would be a different story. We wouldn't be sitting here talking about a disaster turning into something beautiful.
Amen. Thanks for coming on and opening up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.